Hey, what's up guys? JB here. So Final Fantasy VIII is dropping for us here in Global War of the Visions this week. For me, Final Fantasy VIII was a formative experience in terms of that series. 6 was the very first one I played, and then, a couple years later, 7, and then 8 came out, and I was absolutely hooked. So I'm going to be starting that coverage today with Rinoa, who is going to be the free initial get unit from this collaboration. And spoiler alert, I do think that she is actually the crown jewel of this collaboration in terms of the units that are coming in. What exactly is she going to be bringing to the table though? Well, let's dive into her kit today and let's find out. So Rinoa is going to be joining War of the Visions as a new 90 cost Earth unit. She has base 3-1 movement and she can wear hats and cloth. Starting with the TMR, and actually I really like this one. This one has 2 casts and it's going to pass 20 defense as well as 25 unit resistance to your ally, while at the same time boosting your own magic by 40%. Now, if you have seen my Kill Elia video, you know that unit resistance is very much in demand right now, so top-notch TMR as far as that's concerned. Something that you could throw on your backline unit, have them pass this buff on to a tank or a frontline unit and make them that much more survivable in battle. It does have a range of 3 here on the buff as well, so it can make it very flexible in terms of setting up your initial turn sequences. Taking a look at her stats right now, unfortunately, it's really not a great story. Statistically, nothing at all is jumping out here. Very much average, or actually even below average in pretty much every category here. It's really not super uncommon, in terms of backline units, and especially more support-focused units at that. Still though, some of these totals are a little bit disappointing, especially that HP is pretty low. We are looking at just an average level of agility here as well, and she doesn't have any agility passive that she can use to really boost that up any further either. So you're going to really need to work with this unit in terms of bringing her agility up to a competitive level. Accuracy also very poor for this unit, amongst the worst in the game, so she may have issues even hitting moderately evasive units or maybe even units that have been heavily reincarnated. Moving down now into the defensive stats, we're looking at 0 defense and 8 spirit for this unit. On the resistance side, we've got 5 to slash and missile, and then 10 to magic. So really nothing standing out all that much there. She is going to be carrying 2 different weaknesses here though. She's got a negative 10 to both pierce and strike damage. On the ailment front, we are looking at 50% to Toad and to Paralyze. Paralyze actually is a pretty good one to have right now, just because of that Elia matchup. Rinoa is going to be bringing in 10% to Slow as well, which it's a good one, but you are going to need to augment that with maybe a Trust Stone or some other resistance to bring it up and make sure that she can resist that one as well. For her mastery ability, she's going to be picking up 15% lightning resistance, which is relatively unique and very valuable actually for that counter element matchup. And then she's going to be getting a reduction in her casting time of 20%, which is always very much needed on these mage units. Now, if you do take her all the way up to level 140, she's going to be picking up just a very modest boost to her magic here at 10%, and that is factored into that total that we looked at above. More importantly, though, she is going to be getting that 15 area resist, so she does have a couple of passive defensive bonuses here that are going to help her out quite a bit, and something that you always like to see in these mastery abilities. In terms of the passives that she has access to, that first one that I have listed here, I think it's going to be an always on for her. It's going to give her a further reduction in her cast time of an additional 20%, and then another 15 area resist, which is going to get her up to 30% right out of the box. Now, for a secondary passive, I think it's going to depend on, whether you want her to be a bit more offensive focused or maybe more of a support focus. I think if you are looking for a bit more of a support healer type function for her, that healing power can definitely be valuable. Otherwise, though, I think in most scenarios, I do really like that spirit penetration, kind of help amp up her damage potential there just a bit. In terms of a counter ability, Rinoa does not get one of these sort of the new generation kind of high proc chance counters, but she does have access to some old favorites here, including Counter Cure and Magic Reflex. I think in most situations, I'd probably opt for that curative one. Moving now into Rinoa's main kit, and we're going to start here with her buffs and supportive skills. Skill number 1 is going to be a self buff. This one's going to be a further reduction in her cast time of another 40%, a 20% flat increase to her magic damage output, and then nullifying 3 powerful status ailments here in Silence, Berserk, and Confuse. So really solid self buff here. This would actually put her at an innate 80% cast time reduction, meaning that she'll be able to one-tick any and all of her spells. Very important in the modern PvP landscape with Elia running out there, because again, she does have that Stag's impact impact ability, which will cancel skill activation. Now, skill number 2 is a healing skill for Rinoa. This one's going to be a select 2 heal ability, which is actually a first of its kind. This one's getting a range of 4 with a range height of 2. And this one is bringing a large healing modifier on top of that with a 310 times potency, something that we've really only typically seen on Limit Burst so far in the game. So very, very strong heal here. It does also give your target a 25% agility bonus there for 3 turns on top of it. Now, unfortunately, in terms of the AI usage of this skill, it does have some quirks to it. Something I've talked about with Ready Player Will on our podcast before in the past when she first came out in JP. And what happens is the AI will actually only opt to maybe use only 1 charge or a select 1 on this skill. If you have 2 targets that maybe one of them has, dropped some HP, but maybe isn't specifically below a certain HP threshold, she will only opt to heal a single target in that case, which for me personally, it doesn't make any sense, but to this point, Gumi hasn't addressed it or fixed it, so it seems that's actually their intention with that skill in terms of auto gameplay. Now, the third buff here for Rinoa, this one is going to be a haste skill, and it's operating very much like Velas's Star of Swiftness skill. This one, she's going to be hasting her target, but also herself at the same time. This one does go a step beyond that though, and it does add 25 area resistance there into the buff as well, so super, super nice on this one. And it is going to drop her hate on top of that by 5 as well, so really, really nice skill here. Haste is a meta status, very, very strong ability. Moving into the main attacks here next, and she's got 3 of them that we'll look at. The first one's going to be her low AP attack. This one's got a range of 3 with a range height of 1. It's going to be coming in with that standard low 121% mod. Just a single effect here on the skill, and it's got a 25% chance to confuse your target. So really nothing all that special here. Maybe a bit more useful in manual play, because otherwise the AI, they really only like to break these skills out when your target's low, and this one's going to be able to finish them off. So even if you do land the confuse, you really wouldn't necessarily get much benefit out of it. Rinoa's second attack here is going to be one of her best ones. This one is a massive ranged select 2. It's got a range of 5 and a range height of 2. So very similar there to Elias Stag's impact ability, just has 1 less charge here on it. Really nice modifier here on the skill though, getting up to a large 220%. And this one is a guaranteed hit ability. So this is going to help her out in a big way, and in terms of that accuracy concerns that we noted there in the statistics overview. So super nice ability here for Rinoa. Now the last one here is going to be an AoE attack here for Rinoa. I think this one is probably Quake or Earthquake, something that Rinoa commonly has access to in other Final Fantasy games. And I say that because it has something here that we don't often see on skill descriptions, and it says that it ignores targets with a float status, meaning that it won't hit them if they're floating. And that will actually be a big deal once Saul comes out into the game, because he does come in with that float status as well. Gilgamesh, I think, is another notable one out there that does have that in one of his passive abilities. Now, in terms of range, this one does get up to a range of 5 there on the cross AoE, and it does have a 185% mod. It has 2 effects on it post damage. It's going to have a 30% Earth Imperil, which is quite nice, and then a 25% chance to stun your targets. So very nice one all around. It's nice to have an AoE option there as well to sort of round out her kit. Now, last but not least, we do have the Limit Burst here. Big range on this one, getting up to a range of 6 there on the Diamond AoE. Effect-wise, though, this is pretty basic as far as Limit Bursts go. It's going to just buff her with a 30 Spirit Penetration for 3 turns prior to the damage. So nothing super exciting there, but this spell does have one other interesting attribute in that it's non-elemental damage. Could be helpful maybe in some matchups out there where your enemies or opponents have stacked up very high Earth resistance on you. Now, sadly, there is no Earth Vision card that's going to be coming in alongside Rinoa, nor is there any glove usable card coming in the collaboration either, but let's just sort of review her job overall here and see where things stand currently. Now, the glove group thus far has been one of the more developed ones, getting up to 11 cards so far that have been issued in the game. They do have some key ones that you look for in there as well, in terms of that agility card, and especially that Silver Memories Minwoo card, I think is probably one of the best ones that they have here. That one is going to get a 60% magic bump as well as 20 area resist, which is very, very solid. I think in terms of other units here, there are actually a lot of fun ones like Kefka, Addison, and Zoma. So glove, I think, is one of my more favorite groups here overall. In terms of forming a team purely within this group though, I do think outside of meme builds or maybe manual CM type builds, it is a little bit challenging because there is no tank here in the group. There's not even really any bulky bruiser or somebody that you could use to sort of frontline a team. So you are really going to be looking externally for that kind of function. Thus far, the group has shared cards most often with the Sword A Red Mage group, which does have many bruisers and a couple of tanks in it. But unfortunately, the card overlap, it really hasn't aligned in terms of most of the primary effects that we look for in terms of agility, unit, and area resistance. Of course, that is something that can change on a dime if we were to get maybe a new unit and honestly just a single card that maybe would carry a couple of those effects. And I think if that were to happen, there is definitely a lot to work with here. But currently, at least for auto PvP, or a meta challenging group, I don't quite see that job synergy quite yet. And I think that we'll have Rinoa most often focused on a mono element Earth team in terms of her best usage, at least for right now. So on that note, I have just a single build prepared here for Rinoa this week, and we're going to keep it tried and true with that mono Earth element. We're going to keep it simple with this one. It's just an anti-Alaya build. And certainly magic damage is one of the best ways to get to that unit, especially if it is unit-based like that select 2 attack that we looked at for Rinoa. And I think that's really going to be excellent for Alaya and Squall hunting if we end up seeing a lot of him out there on the battlefield. So starting with the equipment here, I'm going to be going with the Cobalt Glove here for Rinoa for that enhanced magic res penetration. We should actually very shortly be getting access to a new glove from the legendary reliquaries. It just came out recently in JP, and we should be seeing that probably sometime in the next couple of weeks. In the Final Fantasy event, there is her Shooting Star special weapon that she does come along with, and it does have just a single passive on it for 15 healing power. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that item. I would much rather go for the offensive potential here, because we do have access to Trust Stone passes for 10 healing power that we can very easily slot in on Rinoa. For the armor, I am going to be going for the Survival Vest +6 for the unit resistance. I think it's a great choice to deal with the strike teams out there. If you are seeing a lot of mono lightning based teams though, I do think the Earthen Ring is probably the best choice for it. It's going to give that very, very high lightning resistance. For the TMR accessory, I'm going to be going purely for the agility play in this slot. Dark Phoenix Shoes is going to give her access to 7 agility plus whatever you get from the Trust Stone set. In my opinion, she absolutely needs a high agility TMR and an agility trust set just to get her agility to a competitive level, especially with the Earth element, because in most times you're going to be looking at the Eleficaris card there in your primary slot, and that one is just an 8% agility card. For an Esper here in the build, I am going to go in with Sheraton. It's a great offensive choice, but it does actually mix in a little bit of defense for her as well. It's got that 10% innate lightning resistance, and then you can pick up 5% area resist as well as 5% wind resistance there in the board nodes. For the vision cards, I'm going to be going with Sheraton again there for that magic potential, but does have that very nice 10% area resist bestowed. It does give a little bit of agility there in the base stat as well. And I'm going to be pairing that with the Eleficaris card for that unit resistance and agility combo, and then finally round it out there with the Dark Golem card for that area resistance for the party. If you didn't get Dark Golem, of course, Dreams of Heroism is going to work just as well in that slot, but you just won't be able to double up on the area resistance as I have here in this build. In the sub-slots for this team, I'm going to be bringing in Dark Siren for the agility and strike resistance, and then the OG Golem card for that HP and lightning resistance combo. So overall, a good mix of offensive and defensive effects here in the party. For the Trust Stones here in the build, my first stone is going to be dedicated as an anti-Alaya rune. This one's going to be bringing in that strike resistance and lightning resistance. To add along with that, I'm going to be just bringing in some standard defensive effects here. HP and luck, always very, very valuable. And then the third stone, you can dedicate that maybe towards an ailment resist or, any other sort of resist that you're looking for in terms of the matchups that you're seeing. I'm going to be baking all of these things into an HP set just to try to get Rinoa's HP towards a more competitive level, but most importantly for that elemental resistance and sort of stacking that up with the other things that I have here in the build. On the right side, as I mentioned earlier, I am going to be going for that agility set. I think it's super important for her. And I do want to get her attacks out as quickly as I can, so I'm going to be going for that skill activation reduction. I think that's an important one, especially when you don't have her self buff online. Aside from that, I am going to be bringing that healing power. I think that's important, especially if you aren't using her shooting star weapon. And then aside from that, just some offensive passives here just to sort of round out the build. So kind of reviewing the stats here for the build, you can see despite having HP cards and an HP trust set, she's only just over the 9k HP threshold, which is definitely not ideal. But I do think we make up for that in a big way with the defensive resistances here, which are really quite stellar, and because of that, I'm not all that worried about that HP total. We're going to have 35 unit resistance, an incredible 71 area resistance, which will go up to 96% when you do get her haste buff there online. We are also carrying 67% lightning resistance here in the build, so defensively very, very sound, especially in the counter element matchup. Even if you were to run into an Edward Elric here, she's going to be able to brush off his AoE attacks with no problem with this high area resistance. And of course, with her hate down, she's not really going to have to worry about his select 2 either. Offensively for Rinoa, really not too shabby with a 50 spirit pen, so that I think is above average for a support slot. And if she were to get her limit burst out, that's going to be brought up to an 80%, which is very, very strong. Not the most amazing magic total here, coming in below 1500, but really not terrible by any means. I think that she's going to really be able to put out some pretty decent damage. So what is my verdict today on Rinoa? Starting with the good here, this is a unit that's going to be bringing in a much needed support angle for the Earth element, a role that thus far you've needed to fill with lower MR or SR quality units. She's going to be bringing in not only haste and healing, but very nice agility and area resistance buffs there on top of it. Although support units aren't generally known for being very tanky, I do have to say I've come away quite convinced that if you build her right, Rinoa can fit that role quite well. And I think will be very similar to Velis in that regard, especially if you are able to leverage her high area resistance and her physical barrier from her Grimoire Keeper subjob. Offensively, this is also a unit that you're going to have to respect in terms of her damage output. She's bringing in some decent penetration levels, as well as a very long-range Select 2 ability with a very large damage modifier. On the other side of the coin though, although her resistances can be built to a quite nice level, statistically as we saw, this unit is very much below average, particularly with that lower end HP, and backing it up with underwhelming magic, agility, and accuracy totals. She's also going to be bringing in 2 innate damage type weaknesses with both Pierce and Strike, 2 damage types that the Wind element in particular are very, very strong with. Like any mage out there, casting time on her spells is also very much a concern, and very much in the forefront right now with Elia's Stag's Leap ability. And particularly with Rinoa only able to get to that 1 tick on her healing spells while she does have her self buff online. And lastly, also on the healing frontier, there is also that AI quirk that I mentioned earlier, something to be aware of, in terms of that Select 2 heal that she has, where she simply will not use and exhaust both the charges of that ability unless both of the units are specifically below a certain HP threshold. Overall though, as I alluded to earlier, this unit is quite strong, and much like the Final Fantasy V collab before it, I do consider this free unit here the prize of the collaboration. Not to mention the art and sprite work here for Rinoa are beautiful, and I think Gumi has done an excellent job of realizing this unit. And with the lightning element very much in the forefront of the PvP meta right now, she's a unit that has a lot of opportunity for usage in the game right now. So I really can't recommend enough that everyone out there build up and utilize this unit. So there it is, guys. That is my review today on Rinoa. I know that Final Fantasy VIII has been long awaited by the community, including myself, so I am happy that it is finally here. With the accelerated schedule, it's definitely been a rough couple of months here for War of the Visions, so hopefully with the onset of this new worldwide version, we can get back to some kind of normalcy here going forward and really try and put that bad experience here in the summer behind us. Let me know what you guys think of this unit and how you'll be using her down in the comments below. While you're down there, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button for me. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.